This is the roller that's used throughout the industry, the transparent 18-inch long roller. It's very, very easy to use. I'm going to lay it under my machine, and I'm going to bring the needle down. That's 1/4 of an inch. And when I bring my presser foot down, I find that the presser foot lines right up on that 1/4 inch. So this means I don't need to make any mark on the machine for 1/4 inch. There are marks on the machine. This machine does have a gauge, but I find having a gauge that I've made with drafting tape is easier for me to use. I'm going to move it over to 3/8 of an inch. And again, I'm going to drop my presser foot, so that's on 3/8. Now, why will I need 3/8 inch gauge? And the answer is because if you are sewing the way the industry sews, and this is the easier way to do it, you would want a 3/8 inch seam allowance on your armholes if you're sewing a sleeve into it. You would want it at your waistband if you're sewing a waistband to a skirt. And you would want it in a princess seam because that has a curve and you want a 3/8 inch seam allowance there. In the industry, the seam allowances vary on the patterns. It's not a 5/8 inch seam allowance at all. And the reason for this is that if you mark your seam allowances on your patterns and cut them out on those variant seam allowances, you only cut the garment out once. Whereas if you sew everything on a 5/8 inch seam allowance and then trim your seam allowances back, you're cutting your garment out twice. Who needs to do that? So the edge of the tape gives me 3/8. Now I want also 1/2 inch. I got the needle right down on the 1/2 inch and line it all up with the tape. And that's giving me, it's just 1/8 of an inch beyond the edge. And I'm going to use a ballpoint pen that hopefully you want to check to make sure that it won't run, because you don't want any ballpoint ink in your clothing. All right, and I'm going to draw a line on here. I'm going to move it over to 3/4. Notice I'm not making 5/8. The 5/8 inch seam allowance is rarely used in industry, so why should you use it? I'm going to put the presser foot down again so it holds the roller in place. And I'm going to mark this down, and that's going to give me a 3/4 inch seam allowance. And that's it. All right. So I now have a 1/4 inch gauge on the edge of my straight stitch snap-on foot. The edge of the tape is 3/8. The next line is 1/2. And the line all the way over is 3/4. All right, so this is 1/2 here. We can even write it 1/2. And this is 3/4. So that I know what I'm dealing with. This is going to give you beautiful clothing. It's very, very important, by the way, that you have your seam allowances correct and that you're cutting correctly, because if you aren't, it will affect the fit of your garment. And I'm going to sew on the 1/4. The next gauge I want to sew on is 1/2. Put the needle down, then the presser foot, and then I'm going to move it over on the 3/4. Bring that down. Now, when you're practicing what you want to do, you want to go all the way down the strip of fabric, not just stop the way I'm doing here. And then what you want to do to see whether or not you're really getting it right, 1/4 here from the edge. This should be 1/8, and this should be 3/4 from the edge. And it should be parallel all the way down. And practicing this skill is going to give you much nicer clothing. It's going to be really beautiful.